On June 15, 2026, the players of Cabo Verde walked onto the field in Atlanta for their country's first World Cup match. Across from them stood Spain, one of the tournament favorites, while above the stadium flew the flag of a nation many viewers had never seen. 90 minutes later, the score was 0-0, and a small Atlantic republic had forced the world to learn its name. For many people, Cabo Verde seemed to have arrived all at once. In reality, that appearance had taken more than 5 centuries. The team on the field, drawn from the islands and from families scattered across Europe, was the latest expression of a much older history. Cabo Verde exists because of the Atlantic. The ocean gave the island strategic value, carried people and ideas between continents, and helped create a language, a culture, and a global community. The same ocean also made the islands useful to slave traders, vulnerable to imperial neglect, dependent on distant markets, and accustomed to watching their people leave. The best available evidence indicates that the volcanic islands had no permanent human population when Portuguese navigators reached them in the mid-15th century. They rise from the Atlantic several hundred kilometers west of Senegal, some mountainous and cut by deep valleys, others low, dry, and exposed to the wind. Rain is scarce, irregular, and often violent when it comes. There were no large rivers, no broad grain plains, and no mineral wealth waiting to be extracted. What the islands possessed was position. In the early 1460s, Portuguese settlers established themselves on Santiago. At Ribeira Grande, now called Cidade Velha, a valley opened toward a sheltered landing place on the island's southern coast. From there, ships could reach the Upper Guinea coast, turn north toward Iberia, or cross the Atlantic toward new Portuguese and Spanish colonies. The settlement became one of the earliest European colonial towns in the tropics. It also became a center of enslavement. Men, women, and children captured or purchased on the West African mainland were carried to Santiago. Some were held only until another ship transported them to Europe, the Atlantic Islands, or the Americas. Others remained, forced to work in homes, workshops, fields, sugar mills, shipping, and trade. Some escaped, some gained freedom. Their descendants lived beside European settlers, free Africans, sailors, merchants, clergy, soldiers, and people of mixed ancestry. From this unequal society emerged one of the Atlantic world's earliest Creole cultures. That word can sound gentle, as though different traditions simply blended together. The reality began in conquest, coercion, and extreme differences in power. Yet people living under those conditions created forms of life that were not merely Portuguese and not simply transplanted from any one part of Africa. Creole developed in households, markets, fields, and ports through contact between Portuguese and several West African languages. Linguists still debate the exact process of its formation, but it became the language in which most Cape Verdeans lived their daily lives. Foodways, religious practice, music, family networks, and maritime knowledge also took form specific to the islands. The Atlantic had created a society. It had also tied that society to a violent economy. Cidade Velha prospered because ships passed through it, especially ships connected to the trade in enslaved Africans. Its churches, warehouses, fortress, and marble pillory reflected both wealth and domination. When trade routes changed, when rival ports grew, and when raiders attacked, the city's position became a liability. The sea that brought commerce also brought danger, and the colonial economy could move elsewhere when the islands were no longer convenient. That pattern repeated in the 19th century at Mindelo, on São Vicente. Steamships could cross oceans faster than sailing vessels, but they required enormous quantities of coal. Porto Grande, Mindelo's deep natural harbor, became a refueling station on Atlantic routes. British companies established coal depots. Ships arrived, dock workers loaded fuel, merchants opened businesses, and the town grew into a maritime center with unusually direct connections to Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Mindelo's prosperity, however, did not belong entirely to Mindelo. It depended on foreign shipping companies, imperial trade, and a technology that would eventually change. When competitors in Dakar and the Canary Islands attracted more traffic, and when oil began replacing coal, the port declined. Once again, the Atlantic offered opportunity on terms largely decided somewhere else. Beyond the ports, most islanders faced a harsher limit. Rainfall could fail for several seasons. Maize stalks withered, cisterns emptied, livestock died. Families sold possessions, searched for relief work, or waited for remittances from relatives abroad. Drought was natural. Famine was not only natural. Colonial landholding, poverty, weak transport between islands, dependence on imported food, and the decisions of Portuguese officials shaped who ate and who did not. Severe droughts in the 18th and 19th centuries killed large shares of the population. In the 1940s, 2 more disasters struck. Records are incomplete and estimates vary, but many thousands, probably tens of thousands, died from hunger and disease. Portugal's Estado Novo dictatorship did not treat the islands as an urgent responsibility. Officials sometimes organized relief, but it was inadequate, delayed, or tied to labor. Hungry Cape Verdeans were recruited or compelled to sign contracts for plantations in São Tomé and Príncipe and other Portuguese territories. Across the 20th century, tens of thousands left under arrangements that many survivors remembered as forced migration in everything but name. For a family in a dry interior village, the Atlantic could therefore mean 2 opposite things. It was the route by which grain, money, and letters arrived. It was also the route by which a parent, spouse, or child disappeared. Cape Verdean migration had already spread far beyond the Portuguese Empire. In the 19th century, American whaling ships stopped at the islands for provisions and crew. Cape Verdean sailors reached New Bedford and other New England ports. Some settled. Later, Cape Verdean-owned packet ships carried passengers, mail, goods, and remittances between the islands and the United States. Other communities formed in Senegal, Portugal, the Netherlands, France, Angola, and São Tomé. Emigration was often a response to scarcity, but the people who left did not simply vanish into other countries. They built associations, sent money home, financed houses and education, circulated newspapers and political ideas, and returned with new expectations. The nation began to exist across several shores before it became an independent state. Its culture traveled the same routes. Morna, now one of Cabo Verde's best-known musical traditions, gave form to departure, longing, love, and return. Other styles, including Funaná and Coladeira, carried different rhythms and social histories. Creole remained a language of intimacy and belonging even where Portuguese, Dutch, French, or English dominated public life. Music did not erase famine or colonial hierarchy. It allowed Cape Verdeans to describe those experiences in a voice that was recognizably their own. By the middle of the 20th century, that voice had become political. Amílcar Cabral embodied the connection between islands and mainland. He was born in Bafata, in Portuguese Guinea, to Cape Verdean parents, studied in Mindelo, and trained as an agronomist in Lisbon. In 1956, he and other activists founded the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, the PAIGC. Cabral argued that the liberation of the 2 colonies should be joined. Portuguese rule had connected them through administration, labor, and racial hierarchy, while Cape Verdeans occupied complicated positions within the empire. Some served as clerks, teachers, or officials. Others experienced the same poverty, coercion, and exclusion that sustained colonial rule. The proposed union was never simple, and tensions over identity and power did not disappear inside the independence movement. The armed struggle took place mainly in Guinea-Bissau, not in the Cape Verde Islands. Cape Verde's contribution came through underground organization, diplomacy, logistics, and party leadership. Cabral was assassinated in Conakry in 1973 and did not live to see either country become independent. Then, in April 1974, young Portuguese officers overthrew the dictatorship in Lisbon. The new government moved to end wars it could no longer sustain. After negotiations and elections for a national assembly, Cabo Verde became independent on July 5, 1975. Independence did not end drought, isolation, or emigration, nor did it immediately produce liberal democracy. The PAIGC established a one-party state. After a 1980 coup in Guinea-Bissau destroyed the project of political union, the Cape Verdean branch became the PAICV and followed its own path. Yet the new state built institutions in conditions many observers considered unpromising. It expanded education and health services, managed food imports and international aid, and treated drought as a problem requiring public action rather than fatal acceptance. Rain remained unreliable, but after the catastrophes of the 1940s, drought no longer produced mass death on the same scale. In 1991, the opposition movement for democracy won the first multi-party parliamentary election, and the ruling party transferred power. Later elections produced further alternation. Cabo Verde did not become stable because island societies are naturally peaceful, or because colonial rule had prepared it for success. Stability came from political choices, administrative experience, civic organization, outside partnerships, and a population accustomed to maintaining institutions across distance. The country still faces the old Atlantic dilemma. It depends heavily on imported goods, tourism, services, foreign investment, aid, and remittances. Climate change intensifies pressure on water and agriculture. Many young Cape Verdeans still see departure as the clearest path to opportunity. Yet migration is no longer only a measure of loss. It is also part of how the nation works. That was visible in the 2026 World Cup squad. 15 of its 26 players were born outside the islands. The team represented clubs in 14 countries, and more squad members had been born in Rotterdam than in Praia. They were connected through parents and grandparents, through citizenship, family memory, music, language, and the decision to represent Cabo Verde. This was not a footballing shortcut. It was the national form history had made available. The team reached the round of 32 and pushed Argentina into extra time before losing 3-2. Its run did not prove that suffering produces success, and it did not settle every debate about race, language, or belonging. It showed something more historically specific. A country shaped by departure had learned to make distance serve connection. For centuries, outsiders valued these islands because ships could use them. Slave traders used them. Empires used them. Coal companies used them. Colonial officials sometimes treated their people as labor to be moved when the rains failed. Cape Verdeans did not escape the Atlantic. They transformed their relationship with it. Routes once controlled by merchants and empires became routes for remittances, music, political organization, family ties, and national representation. The ocean that repeatedly exposed the islands to exploitation and abandonment also became the space across which Cape Verde survived. Was Cabo Verde's greatest historical achievement overcoming the dangers of the Atlantic, or turning those dangers into a source of national strength?